And I'm going to show you how to do the small pieces for the Unlined Gothic. This is the maniple. Pad is still in here. This had to be cut. I could not cut this on a fold here because the fleur-de-lis all go one direction. And so if I had done it on a fold, they would have been going this direction on this side and they would have been going up on the other. The stole, again, because of the curve in the neck, had to be cut in two pieces. It's always cut in two pieces because of that. But it is cut on folded fabric, so you get a right and a left, and the patterns will match on both sides. The same with the chalice veil, was cut on folded fabric, with the center of the chalice veil running down the center of a pattern so that it will be symmetrical. I tried to do that with the stole and the maniple as well. For the small pieces, you need 6 appliques. If you're using appliques, again, you can use trim. You can make crosses out of trim. Here's trim. You can cut a piece of trim however long you want it. Simply turn the ends in to make points and put 2 going different directions to make a cross on the bottom of it. You can also use trim if you're using in your Ofri trim. You could use, for example, this design in the Ofri, the circle or the diamond, and cut it out and satin stitch around it and use those instead of an applique. You don't have to use anything at all. It looks just very nice just that way. If you have an embroidery machine, you can embroider something on it. I like appliques, so I made some, but I'm going to show you how to cut them out. If you buy them from me, they're not always cut out. If you make your own, you'll need to know this. You're going to cut right at the outside edge of the satin stitch. You can leave a little bit of a border so you don't cut those stitches, but you want to cut as close as you can to it. This is where little girls who played with paper dolls have an advantage over other people, because you learn to cut lines, and on very exact lines, so it helps here. If you should cut those satin stitches, take a little bit of that Beacon's Fabri-Tac, and with a pin or a toothpick, wet it with the glue and just touch the threads and pull them around to the back and glue them in place. It's been known to happen. All right, so it's just that's all you do, is just cut around it. The satin, if there's any fraying at this edge, the satin stitch will stop it, and you can come back later and with scissors and just clip any loose threads that happen to come out. And that's it for the appliques. You also need to put a cross in the middle of it, but I'll talk about that when we get to it. Let's start with the maniple and the stole. And I usually do both at the same time because you're going to do the same thing to both. First thing you do is take your pattern off it, always helpful, and put it aside for your next one. Now, just as we did with the chasuble, you want French seams because this is unlined. So French seams do wrong sides together. This is the wrong side of this, and this is the wrong side of this. The right side, really, whichever you decided at the beginning was your right or wrong side, you want to stick with it. On mine, there's more of a satiny background on the right side, and I like that, so that's what I'm sticking with. Make sure I've got it the right side up on both of these. All right, so it's wrong sides together. So Put your wrong sides together and pin them. I try to stay in range of the camera. I've been known to go out of it often, I'm sorry. I put a ruler here on the table to tell me that's where the camera starts viewing. All right, so, we're going to sew this across. I put a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this. So we're gonna sew across at 1/4 inch. Half of your seam allowance, because you're gonna do 2 sewings. Wrong sides together, and then right sides together, so that we enclose this raw edge inside the seam. So that's the manifold, and we'll do the same thing with the stole. And again, we want wrong sides together. This is the wrong side, so this should be the wrong side. Wrong sides together. Just the opposite of what you normally do, which is right sides together. You're doing wrong sides together. And I'm a right-handed person, so I have to turn this around. And again, both of them are going to get sewn with 1/4 inch seam allowance. So, okay, and I'll do that and come back. Okay, so I've sewn them. And again, we're going to press them. Now, you have this nice, on the right side, the seam is enclosed inside. And on the wrong side there, you have the, it's just a nice seam. But you want to press this flat, either one direction or the other. It doesn't matter which direction, but you need to press it flat. Unlike if you were putting a lining on it, you would press it open. Here you're going to press it to one side. And as I say, here is where that cross would go, right in the center. But that's going to have to wait till after. And same with the stole, pressing it open. And this is where this is where the cross would go on this, in the very middle. All right, now, the next thing to do is decide where you're going to put your appliques, if you're going to put appliques, and if you're going to put fringe, where that's going to go, because it will make a difference to where your trim goes. Again, this is unlined, and you're going to do the same thing with this as you did with the chasuble. The raw edges are going to get folded over and covered with trim. So, get a ruler here. This is my applique that I'm going to use on this one. This is a different vestment than the one that I filmed originally because I lost the film, got deleted for doing the accessory pieces. So I'm doing them over again, but on a different vestment that I have to make. But it's the same. The steps are the same. So I'm thinking I'd like it to be about there. I usually like about 2 inches from the bottom. That a 1/2 inch of this bottom is going to get turned. So 2.5 inches from the bottom, that actually is 3 inches. 2 inches from the bottom would be here. This is an extra wide. This is a little bit wider trim than the one I was using in the other video. It's going to go about here. Actually, it's going to go about here because this is going to get turned. So it'll actually be about here. And that leaves between the applique and the trim about an inch space. If I'm putting fringe on it, and the only fringe I happen to have right now is gold, and I don't want to use gold with this. I have some blue, just have enough. It's not very wide trim, it's only about 3/4 of an inch. And if I put that below the trim, I think I'd probably, or again, because it's unlined, I can wait on that and come back and do it afterwards, because again, it's unlined. And if it was lined, you have to do everything before you put the lining on, but this, in this case, that's not the way it's going to be. So, all right, so I'll leave a little bit of room, about 1/4 of an inch for that. So there's the 1/2 inch. It's going to get turned. That will include my so it's about an inch where the trim will go, and I think about an inch up from that was nice for the applique. So from the bottom should be about 2.5 inches. That's what that is, 2.5 inches. So I'm going to put the applique here in the middle. Again, I'm just going to pin it in this, down the center, as we did with all the trims, and put stitchery in from the outside edges. And again, this one also 2.5 from the bottom. And if it looks better to you to put it close to your trim, you can do that. You don't need appliques. Again, for example, this is the ochre on this particular vestment. I could have just run, I could have used one of these, or I could have just run the trim across. Maybe put the circle in the middle and run the trim all the way across and put no applique. That looks really nice on a vestment too. All right, so now I need to find my steam-a-seam. Not my steam-a-seam. I want, that's why, because I'm out of it. Stitch witchery. And I'll put 2 pieces of stitch witchery underneath this. Do a little bit at the edge. On both sides. And make sure it's straight. And then hit it. Again, you see me tapping it all the time. That's to feel the temperature of it. You can tell if it's stuck, or you can also tell if it's too hot by touching it. So I'm always patting it, if you haven't noticed that. Just here. Do the same with this one. Two piece. This is a very wide applique, so make sure. Usually 2 pieces is enough, but I'm going to put a little bit more because it's. They're usually narrower than this, but Just depends on the design. You use what you need to use. All right, and now that's straight. Okay, this is ready to be sewn. And again, you'll do the same thing as you did with the other applique. You're going to sew very close in around the outside edge with either the background color or the applique color. And that's the stole. We do the same with the manifold, so I do them both at the same time. And I'm going to put it the same distance up, 2.5 inches. You need 6 appliques if you're using them. 2.5. And you want to make sure it's centered too. Quite. It's 1 3/4, 1 3/4. Jump threads here. Okay. 1.5. And 1 3/4. Stitch witchery. Constantly looking at it to check, make sure I've got the right side up, because sometimes it just doesn't look or feel like I have the right side up, but it does. It is. And again, I'll sew this, I'll sew all 4 of these and come back. Actually, wait a second, I'm going to do the child's veil too while I'm at it. I like to do the same thing on all of them. And the bursts I would do as well, but I've showed you the bursts in a separate video, so I'm not going to repeat that here. Okay, so this is the right side of the fabric. And this is the center. Right here is the center pattern. And I like to put the applique, because it goes, chalice veil goes from the altar up over the top of the chalice and part way down the back, so he has room to put his hand there. You most of the chalice veil is in the front, So you're going to put you're not going to center it in the center of the chalice. That would be on kind of like hanging over the lip, because here's about where the top of it would start going over the top of the chalice, and then this is the part that would hang down the back. You want it in the middle of the front half. So I usually put it here in about the middle of the lower third. And again, I want it going through this. I'm going to be using about a half an inch of this is going to be turned. So I'm going to pull it up about an inch and a half. This is where the middle of the chalice veil is, I think. It's not. This is the middle here. So, see, I'm in about the middle of the lower quarter. You could go up a little higher if you wanted to, but again, this is about where it's going to start going over the top of the chalice. So you want it kind of centered in this lower section. So it doesn't matter if it's too low, you just don't want it too high, because it will interfere with the draping over the top of the chalice. So right about here is good. And again, put some stitch witchery. Two small pieces for the edges. Okay, now we're ready to iron it.